Welcome and good evening. I'm Dr. Beth Rubin. I'm a professor of education at Rutgers Graduate School of Education, and the GSE would like to welcome all of you to our 5-session spring series on equity and excellence in remote learning, a continuation of the collaborative series that we began this past summer to support educators in creating supportive, engaging, and equitable learning experiences for students in this unprecedented time. If you cannot see the comment stream in your YouTube window, just refresh so that you can see the comments and get into conversation with your peers. Like the first 5 sessions, which are available online, these sessions were designed by a diverse group of educators, community members, and scholars, sharing their experiences and expertise, their challenges and successes from the past months of teaching amid a global pandemic. Tonight's session focuses on remote preschool, the challenges, and what we've learned. Our hosts for the evening are Dr. Gigi Weisenfeld and Beth Gardner from the National Institute for Early Education and Research at Rutgers GSE. Dr. Weisenfeld is an assistant research professor at the National Institute for Early Education Research. Her current work includes conducting national scans of pre-K policies at the state and city level, researching state efforts that support the implementation of high-quality preschools, contributing to the research and production of NEAR's annual State of Preschool Yearbook. She also offers technical assistance for state and city leaders on designing and enhancing pre-K efforts. Previously, she held the position of Hawaii's Director of the Executive Office on Early Learning in the Office of the Governor, worked on state-level birth to grade 3 alignment as the P3 Director of Early Learning for Hawaii, was a professor at the City University of New York, and an early Head Start director and preschool teacher. I'll hand it over to you now, Gigi, to introduce NEAR's efforts in studying the impact of COVID on preschoolers and their families and state policy to support remote preschool.
Thank you, Beth. And my slides are up, I'm hoping. Perfect. At NEAR, we have been studying the impact the pandemic has had on preschool children, as well as the policies that are supporting pre-K programs during these times. I'm going to share some of our findings. Next slide. In the spring of 2020, NEAR conducted a national survey to understand the impact COVID has had on preschoolers. On this slide, there are links to review the research and also where you will find further findings as data collection continues. Next slide. What we found was that parents received little remote support, typically less than once a week from their children's preschools. Here is an overview of the content of the support. Again, all of this research can be found on our NEAR website. Next slide. Especially troubling, children with special needs tended to not receive the support they were entitled to under the law. Next slide. When comparing the time parents spent on home learning activities with their children, the amount of time tended to decrease during the pandemic, a time when children were doing preschool remotely as compared to pre-COVID times. Next slide. Approximately 1/3 of 4-year-olds and about 6% of 3-year-olds in the United States attended a state-funded preschool or pre-K program pre-COVID pandemic. Last year, most states operated a pre-K program. They varied widely in terms of the number of hours per day a child attended and the amount of funding the state spent per child. Many states encouraged the blending of both state and federal dollars to support the program and tended to be overseen by the state's education agency. Next slide. Most state-funded preschool programs closed in the US in March 2020. In the summer of 2020, reopening school plans began to appear. However, preschool was not often included in these plans, even though the school system oversaw preschool operations. Next slide. In terms of K-12, most states left the delivery method, in-person, remote, or hybrid, up to the school districts. Districts' written plans were required or encouraged to be submitted to the state. Most states provided some resources to school districts, but again, these varied dramatically by state. Next slide. Less than half of these states that operated preschool programs offered guidance on remote learning for preschoolers. Guidance varied by state. Some topics that were addressed included providing limits on screen time. Typically, states followed the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations of 1 hour of screen time per day for 3 and 4-year-olds. Some states provided daily and/or weekly schedule templates offering a mix of small group, 3 to 6 children, larger group, maybe half, and one-on-one times between children and teachers. A few states provided suggested learning activities and even materials for families beyond printed worksheets. How and when to connect with families was typically covered, and less common were strategies to assess children and collecting and reporting daily teacher and student engagement logs. Next slide. As researchers, there are still a lot of unknowns that we are interested in finding out more about. How effective is remote learning for preschoolers? Have there been any silver linings that we should continue after this pandemic is over? And how have parents and children's home learning activities changed? And I'm going to take down my slides. But at this point, there's no one correct way to answer, no correct answer as to what is the best way to reach preschoolers remotely. We are not suggesting or identifying in this webinar what is quote unquote best practice, but rather want to share different districts' perspectives on engaging preschoolers, their families, and teachers. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Beth Gardner. Beth Gardner is an early childhood education technical assistant specialist at NEAR, working on various projects, with her primary focus on supporting New Jersey state preschool expansion and high quality program implementation. In this role, Beth utilizes her extensive experience as an early childhood teacher and teacher educator to provide supports to program administrators and staff. Before coming to NEAR, Beth worked at the New Jersey Department of Education, Division of Early Childhood Education, administering the state's $17 million annual federal preschool development grant. Beth holds a BA in Early Childhood Education from the College of New Jersey and an MSED in Early Childhood Leadership from Bank Street College. Thank you, Beth, for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Gigi, and welcome everyone. We're happy to have so many of you join us this evening. In March of last year, as New Jersey moved to remote preschool instruction, NEAR was working with a group of state-funded preschool districts to provide implementation supports. During our first virtual meetings, it became clear that we were in uncharted territory and that we would need to rely on each other and a wide variety of resources to begin to understand how best to support children and families during remote instruction. School district staff at all levels have worked to develop new mechanisms for providing instruction, utilizing available resources, and creating many on their own. We've seen some bright spots in this difficult year, innovative strategies for teaching children, supporting staff, and engaging families. Today, we'd like to present just a few examples of promising practices in New Jersey schools. First, I'd like to introduce Natalia Cruz. Natalia works as a preschool teacher in Patterson Public Schools. Prior to becoming a preschool teacher, Natalia worked as an instructional assistant for 4 years in the same school and school district where she's currently employed. She holds a bachelor's degree in mathematics, is completing her alternate route courses, and planning to enroll in a master's program this year. Welcome, Natalia. Take it away.
Thank you, Beth, and good evening to everyone. I'll ask that my slides be shared so that we can continue our presentation. So, as stated before, I am Natalia Cruz. I am a preschool teacher in Patterson Public Schools. Let's begin this presentation with the next slide, where we discuss preparing to engage students. When we talk about student engagement during this time of virtual teaching and learning, we may wonder what it looks like or how it can be done. When I thought about how I would be able to engage my students during this time, I remembered the educational programs I watched as a child. Some of these shows were Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Barney, Sesame Street, and Blue's Clues. These shows provided me with examples, the examples I needed of how to give students more time to answer questions, both during live instruction and when creating a video that would be used at a later time by my students and their families. Just as these programs use puppets and games to have viewers engage and learn from the shows, I incorporated special materials and strategies during instruction, using puppets to tell stories and introduce activities we plan to work on in class, or using my students' curiosities to entice them into seeing what I was doing, using a mystery bag or box and having students guess what could be inside, focusing back to the lesson and engaging multiple senses of the students. Over this past year of virtual learning, using the students' interests and home environments has helped me engage the students during both live lessons and during activities done to extend their learning throughout the day. During this time of virtual learning, reimagining and repurposing household items has helped give students hands-on experiences. An example of repurposing a household item occurred during an asynchronous lesson called Letter Hunt. After watching a video I had created and posted that asked children and families to find letters in their environment, not having alphabet cards was not a problem. A student and her mother found a camping chair and submitted a video of the student identifying the letters she saw on the chair. Another family created their own puzzle using a cereal box. The student was learning through play and working on environmental print and letter identification. During a live lesson, learning about the letter O and which friends and students had the letter O in their names, a parent and child reimagined and repurposed a toilet paper roll into an octopus, since it also starts with the letter O, creating this creature together. These examples show how student engagement can happen through live lessons, synchronous activities, and videos, asynchronous activities. An important part of the students' engagement and participation comes from the family members and caretakers of our students and the relationship between home and school. On the next slide, we will discuss the tools used for student engagement. When it comes to engaging my students through synchronous or live instruction, the district I work in uses Google Classroom and Google Meet to conduct our lessons. During this time, I use tools and strategies previously mentioned, such as puppets and mystery bags, to keep my students interested and involved throughout the lesson. I can assess this by observing the children making eye contact and their participation in asking and answering questions throughout the lesson. For asynchronous instruction, I use many tools to create and share my instructional videos with the families and students of my class. Using an iPhone or iPad, I use apps like Fonto and iMovie to create my videos, then share these videos to YouTube on my YouTube channel that I had created. The links to the videos are shared as assignments on Google Classroom, and once completed, families can submit the completed assignment, be it a picture or a comment. I would like to share with you a quick clip of a video I created to teach a virtual math lesson to demonstrate a way to learn the concept of comparing and measuring at home using Tupperware and containers. We will see that on the next slide.
To play on it, but what I want to do today is I want to match the lid to the container. So with this lid, do you think this container goes with this lid? Let's see. No. Why don't they match? One is blue and one is white. Yes. Why else don't they match? One's a circle and one looks like a square. You're right. So we would have to find the lid that matches. So I'm going to pull a few of these out and we're going to match them together. Are you ready? All right. Let's see what I find. Okay, my friends, so I have some more containers and I want to see if you can help me match the tops and the lids. The tops to the bottoms, the lids to the containers. And I have two containers here and I have two lids here. Which one goes with which? These aren't the same colors, so you can't do it by color, but we can by shape. So what shape does this container have? It goes around and around. It's a circle. Good. Does this square lid go with the circled container? No, it has to be this clear lid.
Just a quick game that can be played at any time at home or material. On the next slide, I have some of my reflections. When I reflect on what my students' engagement has looked like throughout the past year of virtual learning, it has varied and changed depending on the individual family's circumstances. What I mean by this is I've seen the challenges the families have faced when it comes to the proper use of technology, children being appropriately supervised, and the effects of living through a time where the pandemic has affected these families financially, socially, and emotionally. However, even with these challenges, I've been able to create relationships with the families, build a classroom community, see my students work independently, recall and analyze information, apply what they have learned in different ways, have conversations with their teacher, and develop bonds with their peers. Even in a virtual setting, our students encourage each other, ask where their friends are when they miss a lesson, or sing songs to each other at the end of the day. Giving feedback to one another independently and showing concern for each other are the start of the building bonds with one another, even without being in person. This shows that engagement can happen for your youngest learners in both synchronous and asynchronous learning styles. On the next slide, I want to share with you what I have learned from my students during this time. In this era of teaching, I have learned many lessons, starting with how crucial adaptability has been for both teachers and students. For my students and families in the past years, pre-K 3 class, this was their first experience with school, and it has been completely virtual, completely different from anyone's prior experiences. Students and families have been adaptable at creating a new way of doing school to collaborate and communicate what they need to make the most of their child's education. Parents and teachers have been flexible with the timing of instruction and one-on-one lessons, meeting the needs of all families. I've learned that there are times where I must follow the child's lead, using this adaptability to meet the child where they are on any given day.
Once I had sorry to interrupt, Natalia, 2 minutes. Just wanted to give you that heads up.
Perfect, thank you. Once I had a lesson prepared in which we would be counting linking cubes or blocks. I had the material, but the student did not. However, the student was playing with trains when they logged onto the class, so we counted trains instead. Although this technology was new, our youngest learners have quickly mastered the techniques needed to participate in distance learning. I recall believing that teaching the students how to independently mute and unmute their microphones was going to be difficult. Teaching them how to hang up when a meeting was over was going to cause them to hang up whenever they wanted. And this happened for the first week or so. However, now students can independently perform these tasks throughout our virtual lessons, creating a smoother experience for all participants. This all taught me that students will always rise to the occasion and meet any bar that is placed in front of them in their own time. This was proven to be when it came to the social interaction components. I wondered how I would foster a nurturing environment. How would students express concern for each other's feelings if we were not in person? Through modeling and encouraging the students, they now express concern, have conversations, and engage with each other throughout the day. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Natalia. And let's welcome Jenna. I forgot to mention that we are receiving your questions, and we're going to hold all questions to the end. So we're going to do our 3 presentations, and then we will come around to a Q&A. So Jenna's here. Jenna Tabaz began her career in education in 2001 as a New York City teaching fellow, working as a collaborative team teacher in one of Brooklyn's preschool classrooms, while earning her master's in education at Brooklyn College. She continued her work supporting children and their families and coaching teachers at Early Head Start in Paterson, New Jersey for 5 years, and since 2012 at Paterson Public Schools, Department of Early Childhood Education. Jenna, welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Beth. That's a pleasure to be here. Let me begin by saying that remote teaching is hard. At the beginning of our journey, providing young children with learning experiences in their home from our home, The first giant hurdle was learning the digital platform. Extensive professional development from the district and individual support by coaches was provided for the instructional staff. Families were provided with training in multiple languages on using the district provided Chromebooks. Many times, teachers and assistants provided individual support for families, from everything to logging on, to accessing Wi-Fi, or to navigating the Google Classroom. Not one of us ever imagined that digital technical support would become part of our daily and day-to-day job responsibilities. As Natalia was saying, a digital classroom community is still a classroom community. As coaches and teachers, we brainstormed how to communicate and build relationships with children in this virtual world, how to greet one another, show affection, have conversations, play together. Because smiles and laughter amongst children and their teachers are still one of the hallmarks of a high quality early childhood classroom. It's been said many times before that families are the first and most important teacher. One of the things Patterson Public Schools Department of Early Childhood has done is to prioritize the relationship between teachers and families, is to allot a significant amount of time each day for teachers to connect with families. This has proven to be invaluable in allowing teachers to know, understand, and appreciate each family and provide individualized support. As we got our feet under us by connecting both digitally and personally, our attention shifted to implementing the curriculum with increasing fidelity. Although so much changed in 2020, how and what young children learn hasn't. In the classroom, teachers have relative control over the materials the children have access to during play and the materials they use during direct instruction. In 2020, that control and accessibility were taken away. One of the concrete steps that Patterson Public Schools took was to provide each child with a set of materials they might not have at home. These materials included consumables such as crayons and paper, glue, as well as other longer lasting materials that could be used in multiple different ways. We recently completed a clothing study. Supplies collected in the anticipation of in-school learning, such as fabric and notions, yarn, were sent home to each family so that children could have the hands-on experiences with real objects the curriculum intends. We also supported teachers to assist families in creating their own collections of clothing-related items. Hats, scarves, different types of shirts and shoes, a sock collection were all gathered by families for children to investigate and extend their play. Implementing the curriculum with intention through play leads us to the next slide. How do we support teachers to be their best in this digital world of teaching and learning? My coaching partner and I often joke that in addition to technical support, we can add TV production to our resumes. The number of factors to consider in remote teaching can be overwhelming. It is made even more so by how differently lessons must be executed. We show a shape activity using Tupperware, but that's so vastly different than it would be to set up a rhyming activity using objects from your home, which is totally different from how you would set up making homemade Play-Doh together with the children and their families. Teachers like Natalia who are doing this well, they make it look easy. It is anything but. It requires such a high level of creativity, reflection, and innovation. As coaches, we encourage teaching teams to record and watch their instruction. Teachers are amazingly perceptive and accurate in their reflections on their own practice. More often than not, they come up with their own solutions to try to improve the learning experience for their children. Next, we ask teachers to rewatch the video and focus on the children. Look for those demonstrations of learning. What are children showing us about who they are as individuals, and how can we use that to plan and respond to them next time? As coaches, we created videos of ourselves doing virtual instruction, and we use those to reflect with teachers what worked, what didn't, but most importantly, why? Was it the lighting, the camera angle, the type, the size, or even the color of the materials? Was it the length of the lesson? Was it developmentally appropriate? Did it meet the intention of the curriculum? I will say it again, remote teaching is hard, and planning and reflection are crucial. One of the most beneficial and hopefully long-lasting outcomes has been the development of increasingly authentic professional learning communities amongst the teachers. As anyone who has ever worked in a school building knows, not needing to worry about coverage or finding a place to meet is a huge benefit for creating opportunities for teachers to meet and work together. Patterson Public Schools has over 250 preschool classrooms. And since we've been home, we've had the opportunity to bring together teachers from different schools, from public schools and Head Start and the collaborating preschool centers, to share ideas, share resources, and problem solve together. Prior to being home, this would have been impossible and almost incredibly challenging to pull off. But building this increased sense of community leads us to our next slide. How do we support teacher well-being? As coaches, we have a responsibility to support teachers not only in implementing the curriculum, but to be mindful of their emotional well-being, not just because we care about them as people, but because we want them to keep showing up, both literally and emotionally, to do this incredibly challenging but equally important work. One of the questions my coaching partner and I have been more intentional about asking is, what's on your mind? This is an amazing question we learned from the book, The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay-Stanier. More often than not, more than any other line of questioning, it's this question that gets to the heart of what teachers are experiencing and feeling. By asking teachers what's on their mind, it gives us a window into the real challenges they're facing rather than the ones we think they're facing. Teachers have responded with everything from exasperation with technology or disappointment with an unsuccessful lesson, or they might be at a complete loss how to do a particular lesson virtually. The challenge as a coach is not to jump in and solve the problem, but rather to work through the problem-solving process with them so they can generate their own solutions, and those solutions can be meaningful and doable. And that in itself is empowering, because no one wants to work on improving their weaknesses all the time. All of us are reinforced by getting better at something we're already pretty good at. As coaches, the more we can help teachers identify what they're good at and think about how they might refine it, the more self-confident and empowered they will be. Learning something new and changing the way we have done things for years is incredibly difficult and emotionally exhausting work. So not that accomplishments shouldn't be acknowledged or celebrated, but effort and persistence to make those accomplishments happen, especially when it's new and difficult work, is important. Feedback focused specifically on effort and persistence, absent of any suggestions or recommendations, is often what is needed to help keep teachers from burning out and stay on this crazy journey of remote teaching and learning. One thing,
sorry,
yeah.
just a 2-minute warning there.
Thank you. One thing my coaching partner and I have been intentional about is to create time for self-care for teachers. One activity many of our teachers have really enjoyed are the lunch doodles with Mo Willems. We particularly love the democracy doodle. To classical music played by musicians from the National Orchestra, Mo Willems leads us through a series of doodling experiences to work through really strong emotions and to help underscore the importance of making connections. It's a short but wonderful activity to use both drawing and music as a way of self-care. So as we conclude, if 2020 has taught us anything, it is to be imaginative, creative, and flexible. The driving question for early childhood educators has become, how do we take what we know about developmentally appropriate practices, take our curriculums, and make them real, relevant, and accessible to young children and their families? So at the end of the day, what we have learned about remote teaching and learning was what we already knew about early childhood education. It is hard and highly focused and intentional work, that families are our foundation, and that community and collaboration are essential for the innovation necessary in this online world, a digital world where children, families, and their teachers feel safe and secure so that the very best teaching and learning can occur. Thank you so much.
Jenna, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and your information. We will then move over to Harry, and Harry's going to talk to us about engaging families. Harry Vanderberg is a community parent involvement specialist for Children's Corner Preschool in Piscataway. In this role, Harry utilizes the Strengthening Families Protective Factors to work with families, providing linkages to needed resources. Prior to joining the Children's Corner, Harry worked for Rutgers University Behavioral Health Care, providing counseling supports and services to residents of Mercer and Middlesex County. Harry, take it away. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm the CPIS, or Community Parent Involvement Specialist. My focus is in supporting families and promoting engagement in schools. Like Beth said, I utilize the Strengthening Families Protective Factors and the pyramid model for social and emotional competence of young children as a framework to support my work. On the next slide. So this is our goal. At the end of the day, if we could provide families with these 5 things, we're on a great path. The Strengthening Families 5 Protective Factors was developed by the Center of the Study of Social Policy, with the goal being to reduce the likelihood of abuse and neglect in young children. So how can we provide the help? As we all know, knowledge is power. A family that knows what is healthy for themselves and what is developmentally appropriate for their child will hopefully create a more stable environment. So ways we do that are putting on family workshops to provide this information to our families. We use Class Dojo as our platform to provide developmentally appropriate activities. Child and family nutrition information, social and emotional supports. Class Dojo also allows the families to have any message translated into 21 different languages, allowing us to reach a larger portion of our population. And who helps with all this? We take a team approach at Piscataway with the help of the teachers, the master teachers, our BCBA, our social work, and our leadership. We all take a part in this. So having everyone working towards the same goals helps us identify families that may need more individual supports. We also utilize the Early Childhood Advisory Council. This is a group of community stakeholders invested in making our school and our community stronger. This council can look at our policy practices through different lenses. And on the next slide. Due to my background in mental health, I tend to look at community outreach through the lens of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it's a wonderful illustration of what order is most effective when providing services to families. It can be really hard for families to be emotionally invested in the community when their basic needs aren't being met. Every school district's goal is to help children become successful learners. For children to be successful in school, they need a stable home environment that meets their basic needs. Families must be able to have a solid foundation, starting with a sense of safety before working their way up to a sense of community. We always have to remember, not all families are starting from the same place. Building these relationships and understanding their needs helps us develop plans for the next steps of support. My goal is to help take care of some of these basic and psychological needs so that they can be on a path towards self-fulfillment. On the next slide. I tend to break my family engagement up into 2 sections, one providing a sense of safety, the other one providing a sense of community. With sense of safety, be a resource guide for your families. Have a list of available resources that can assist them with basic needs, such as housing, finance, and food. Build community partnerships with local, county, and state organizations. There's so many organizations out there willing to assist families. The difficult part is bringing them both together. 3 local organizations that I'm amazingly thankful for are United Way of Central Jersey, Johnson & Johnson, and the Central Jersey Diaper Bank. They really help provide families with a greater sense of safety and stability. It's imperative to build your cultural competency, to allow respectful back and forth with our families. How you deliver information and who you deliver this to is just as important as the content of this information. So this will lead us to the other part, sense of community. To support a sense of community, we've hosted virtual social events. We had a great turnout for our virtual sing-along. Spirit Weeks are always a fun way for families to come involved, kids supporting their community, their schools. We had a toy drive allowing families to sign up to donate or receive items for the holiday. It lets the community support each other, furthering that sense of unity. And parent workshops. We put on parent workshops from the overview of the day, what families can expect, different types of supports, and then different information that includes setting up a healthy learning environment at home. We've done trainings on positive discipline, helping parents avoid getting into battles of will with their children, help parents set up predictable routines to help children know what to expect next, and helps prevent some of those challenging behaviors before they start. Now, the focus is really on providing a return to the hybrid learning model. This will help parents establish a routine, talk to the children about how things may look differently when they return, and build new skills such as mask endurance. We send out a backpack series from the pyramid model that have tips for children's social and emotional development. On the next slide. So this is the check to see if we're doing things correctly. We all need checks and balances. So I use the Strengthening Family Self-Assessment tool, and I also use the NJ Tiered System of Support Parent and Family Engagement Assessment tool. These self-assessments, along with parent surveys, give us a sense of what we've done well and where we can improve. We review these with our Early Childhood Advisory Council to make an action plan for this year and the following. On the next slide. Lessons learned. So the old adage, less is more, holds up. In an effort to get families all the information they needed, we sent out as much information as possible. Through our Early Childhood Advisory Committee, our parent representatives, they let us know, although the information we're providing to families was great, maybe it was a little too much and in different places. So we switched to have a centralized location for information and steady posts. Parents now know what to expect and when to expect it. If they want to take a look back, all that information is going to be saved for them. And on this last slide, just some resources I can leave you guys with. I built it off, again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, managing that bottom level, that the base support is the New Jersey Department of Human Services Resource Guidebook. It's about 250 pages of all state services out there. The next one is the NJ Parent Link. NJ Parent Link is a website designed to meet the information and resource needs of expecting parents, families with young children that are entering kindergarten. And the last one is the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. On the resource page, you can find our backpack series that we were speaking about. They have some of the social and emotional tools teachers use in the classroom. They converted to at-home tools, such as Solution Kit, Tucker Turtle, and scripted stories. Hopefully this information was helpful. If you need any resources or you want to share some with me, feel free to email me. It's at the bottom, hvandenberg@pwa.org. We're always going to be stronger as a community. So if we do this together, we're going to make it through it. So thanks for spending some time with us.
Harry, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's bring all of our panelists up so that we can start to address some of the questions. So our panelists have been kind enough to take a stab at answering some of your questions this evening. And I will say that if there are questions that remain after we run out of time this evening when we're done, you can feel free to reach out to any of the presenters directly. For those of you who should have, we have email addresses in the presentation, and maybe we should drop them into the YouTube chat. I'm not sure the best way to get those over, but anyway, if we can put us on gallery so that we can see Natalia and Jenna and Harry together. I guess that's how it's going to be. We're going to stay with Harry there. Okay. I have the first question. I'm just looking through the chat, and one of the questions, I think this one will come to Natalia first, and then maybe Jenna or Harry would want to chime in. But the question is, what strategies have been helpful in building relationships between teachers and students, and also between students themselves? Natalia, I know you talked a little bit about this. And follow up to that is, what opportunities are available for students to engage with one another? So maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
Okay, so I will speak as to my experience. I've noticed that knowing a student's home language, if you know a few of those words in their home language, I am blessed to be bilingual. I speak English and Spanish, and most of my students either speak English or Spanish. So being able to communicate with them in their home language helps to build that sense of relationship. I am a big believer in observing the child and their interests and using that to help them see that we have something in common. If I know my students like Paw Patrol, I had a Paw Patrol balloon for my birthday, and that helped that, oh, you know about them, and just giving them that opportunity to see that I like the things that you like and we have that in common helps build that bond. Modeling talk with my instructional assistant, with my co-teacher, and how we want the children to talk is how we talk to each other, and then encourage them to do the same thing. Giving students their own time, especially our English language learners. Sometimes they just need a little more time to understand what you're asking or talking about and to express themselves. Sometimes they go through a silent period, and that is okay. Just knowing that they are there and listening helps build that bond. Giving them that time and saying it's okay that you need a little more time and they know it is helpful building that. We have structured in our schedule in Patterson one-on-one family conference time. So that is where I take the opportunity to build those bonds with not only the children, but also with the families. I use that time to ask parents how they are doing. Is there something I can help them? Is there any concern that I can, work on with the child? And again, throughout our day, we have morning group meeting, afternoon group meeting, where the children now are more engaged with each other. They will sing to each other, saying their name in the morning, using the children's name, saying goodbye in the afternoon. And I found sharing their work with one another and presenting it to the class, having the children pin that friend and have this child explain what they created or what they're doing helps build that as well, and making those connections that, oh, Jenna has a blue balloon and Miss Cruz has a blue balloon. Look, you both have blue balloons, and just bringing them together with similarities.
Thank you so much. Jenna, is there anything you'd like to add to that in terms of strategies for building relationships between teachers and students, or what you've seen teachers do in terms of students engaging with one another?
I think it's just about being really creative, like Natalia was talking about. So greeting one another. I know on that one of the resources that Harry shared, the National Center for the Pyramid Model Innovations, they give a bunch of really fun examples of how you can teach children how to greet one another, whether that's from doing kind of the air fives to a superhero salute. They just find it really, really fun. But most importantly, I would say, the more teachers can create those hands-on, just really fun and silly experiences, the kind of the walls of the screen, they break down quite a bit. And it takes a little time, but children do learn to kind of pay attention to the other boxes on their screen. And it's been fun to see it evolve over time, especially as they kind of learn the rhythm, learn the kind of the flow and the culture that each teacher is creating.
Thank you so much. That's great. I see another question about orientation or training for families. And so I know Harry touched a little bit about what they're doing in Piscataway, but the question reads, I'm wondering if you can say more about any orientation or training that you offered for families, if any. And I don't know if this is specific to any particular topic, but I know that it may be related to using virtual platforms, or it may be related to child instruction. Does anybody have any family orientation you can talk about? And I'll throw this out to any of the three of you that has an answer for that question.
I could speak about it for a moment.
Go ahead, Harry.
With some of the family orientation, this might have been the first time parents really saw what happened in the classroom. So we wanted to really prepare them for it. Showing the parents that we're teaching through play. These are some of the things that we're going to do. So a lot of parents maybe had different ideas of what might be going on. So we just started everybody off with, this is what preschool looks like here. These are some of the things you should expect. And then from there, we went on to, okay, let's start building some of these skills for the children. If it's for, okay, now that you're gonna be home, maybe our bedtime routine is gonna be thrown off, or our morning time routine is gonna be thrown off. A lot of the backpack series will take you through some of these steps and really give parents some helpful hints to not engage in that. Again, that battle of the will, we always lose. So anytime we're gonna engage in that, it never goes well. So try to meet these problems before they happen. If we can inform the parents of how to do it, maybe it saves them a little bit of stress, which always creates a happy environment, which allows the kids to be more engaged.
Thank you, Harry. I see there's a question. Did anybody else want to respond to that question about orientation in Patterson?
I mentioned briefly earlier that Patterson did provide training in Google Classroom is what we use. And I know that the family workers do regular meetings with families to, cover a whole host of topics. And as Natalia mentioned, those kind of sometimes daily parent opportunities for teachers and parents to connect, all of them kind of working in cohesion has been tried to be the most, responsive model that we could do for families.
Thank you. We have a question about what are districts doing for types of remote assessment? And I guess I will throw that to Natalia first, starters.
So when
I assume we're talking about child assessment at this point.
So for the child assessment in our district, we use Teaching Strategies Gold, and in collaboration with the creative curriculum is our curriculum. So I use both hand in hand to assess my children. There are not marking periods, but collection periods. And each collection period I observe through virtual learning, through live instruction, and use my curriculum to hit those objectives that I assess the children on. Each collection period is different, from 3-year-olds to 4-year-olds, and one period to the next. We are looking for different objectives, and they grow with the study, progressing with the children and their growth throughout the year. But I am collecting assessments throughout the year and using the recordings or the live lessons to observe and assess all components of our day and our curriculum.
Natalia, could I just jump in for a quick follow-up? I'm curious, we've heard from other preschool teachers in states that sometimes there's a role for the families to help with data collection, and I'm wondering if that's been part of your process as well, and if so, can you just describe that a little bit?
It has definitely. Parents will send me, as seen on my slides before, videos of them doing an activity with their child, pictures of the child's work that they've done independently. And I will use that for my assessments as well, because it is a partnership, as we've said, with the families. So that is a big part of it. There are certain objectives I feel are maybe difficult to collect, not being in person, like a writing sample. So that is definitely a big part of how I collect my assessments as well, that partnership with families.
Thanks. I don't know if Jenna or Harry, if you had anything to add about the child assessment component or ways that you've been involved in that data collection or supporting it?
To kind of go with like the ongoing theme is a lot of times, when we were in school, we had a certain couple of ways that we knew we could assess for different skills. So now we're virtual, and it's about reimagining. What are other ways those skills can be demonstrated? What are other ways that I can assess whether or not children are making connections? What are other ways that I can assess how children understand emotions and other people? I think it's just about kind of broadening our thinking to be a little bit more holistic and responsive in this virtual world. But again, that kind of comes back down to that reflection piece and the collaboration piece between all of us colleagues to try to really figure it out, because it looks and sounds a little bit different, but at the end of the day, it's still those same developmental skills that we're promoting in young children.
Thank you. And I think there's one more question, another question that we'd like to get to. One is about, are there any specific websites that preschool teachers have found to be successful for you virtually? And I almost would open it up to all three of you, because I think there's a ton of information out there. So what has been particularly helpful that we may not know about that we should follow up and look at? And I'm going to ask all three of you.
I'll jump in first. I will have to say that I am a big fan of our curriculum. I do look at those resources daily on it for instruction, and it does have great ways of seeing objectives differently. I also have to say that my pre-K team at the building I'm in is very strong, and we are very big on collaborating. So someone who's strong at video making, it may not be as strong at Google Slides. So we share those resources with one another so that we have the same studies going on, same resources happening, and then we can just tweak it. We use it as a jumping board. So what I use for my videos might be shared strictly the same way by another teacher, or they may use it to redo a video how they like it to be done. So I don't have websites per se. I have my team, my pre-K team, and my curriculum and assessment that I use.
Thanks. Jenna, what about you? Do you have a website that you'd like to share or a trick?
Well, I would say, like Natalia was mentioning, we're really trying to limit the screen time that young children have. So instead of necessarily, sending children and their families to, other online places, what teachers are trying to do is being really intentional about supporting families with ideas of activities, play-based activities, with hands-on stuff that they can do to extend the learning. I will just though re-mention the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, because it's really high quality resources. All of the materials that they had designed for in-person, they've reworked them for remote. So as Harry was mentioning, there's resources for teaching children how to solve problems at home, social problems at home, or resources to help children calm down, resources for families for their own self-care. There's just a tremendous amount of resources on that website. So that's probably my top pick.
Thanks. Harry?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jenna. It's just such a wonderful website. It's catered so nicely from the classroom to at-home teaching that it just makes for an easy transition. And coming from my perspective, again, supporting the families, it's really that New Jersey Department of Human Resources guidebook. It's such a wonderful place to start if you're looking for food, shelter, clothing, assistance with any disability, mental health, ways to manage stress. It's just a nice handbook to have a starting off point. And there they can direct you to other agencies, maybe a little less known, not at state level, maybe more at that county level, to really meet your needs. So again, bringing some of that mental health background into it, I see things through that social worker eyes. So the stronger I can make their community and their household, the easier it is for these kids to learn, less stress on them, less stress on the families.
Harry, thank you so much. We are just about out of time, so I will once again thank Harry Vanderberg from Piscataway Public Schools, Natalia Cruz and Jenna Tabaz from Patterson Public Schools, and I will hand it over to my colleague Gigi Weisenfeld.
Thanks, Beth. Wow, this went by quickly. I just would like to, oops, my notes are there, sorry. I just want to say, really thinking about what everyone said today, it's really all about building relationships. Natalia discussed how important it is to build relationships with families and classroom communities. Jenna, you discussed connecting, building relationships, not only with the families, but also between coaches and teachers. And Harry, you shared how and why we need to think about those relationships with our families. Another theme that came up today during our conversation was differentiating, not only for children, but also knowing that families have access to different materials. Jenna talked about sending materials home to families to support the implementation of the curricula. Harry, you described the importance of knowing the organizations that are within your community and the guidance, less is more. But I have to say, Jenna, you said it best. Remote teaching is hard. Tonight is not knowing all of the answers, but sharing great ideas. We are hearing from our international friends, and I know there was a question about that, but what is happening in other countries? We do not know all of the answers. I wished we did, but we are collecting the research and looking at it and doing our own. So please look back on the NEAR's website or email me, and I'm happy to share it with you as new things come out. But finally, tonight is also about building connections with you and everyone who's been participating in this webinar. These are challenging times, so the more connected we are, the more we're able to support one another. So again, I'd like to thank not only Beth, but all three of you for participating in this webinar tonight. And with that, I'm going to hand this back over to our other Beth Rubin. Thank you.
Thank you. We are so grateful to you, Gigi and Beth, and to our panelists, Natalia, Jenna, and Harry, for sharing their expertise and experiences, and to all of you out there for joining us. There were wonderful conversations going on in the chat, and all of the resources that were mentioned in tonight's session will be available on the website, the link of which is posted in the chat as well and can be found on the GSE website. Please join us next month for session 6 of this ongoing series, which will focus on youth perspectives on learning in the remote classroom. And you can find the links to a recording of this session at the link provided in the chat. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you and good night.